Is Nintendo about to go to war on Switch emulation? This is a question that I asked about a week or so ago on Twitter. I made a poll and said, do you think that Nintendo is going to put DRM of some kind to prevent emulation to run on specifically Tears of the Kingdom? Because arguably that is the bigger game that they want people to not be emulating, at least initially. So this was the question that I had asked. And for the most part, it was pretty split, but more than the majority of you still agreed with me that likely Nintendo is looking to put DRM of some kind on Tears of the Kingdom. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But at first, the reason that I posed that question was that Denuvo just kind of tweeted out to the ether, like, we have to stop emulation. This is to protect your games. And who were they talking to? It seemed to just be out of nowhere because for the most part, emulation, no real game dev cares about it because it's games that aren't being sold by them anymore and they're not making any money by it, except for Switch emulation. So this is the only part where this actually makes any sense. And I don't know why Denuvo would tweet about it because it's just so weird. It's like they almost certainly don't have Nintendo's business, but they're tweeting about this to, I guess, notify them? I have no idea. It's so weird. But Nintendo could still be doing this in-house with their own DRM solutions. So that was the initial question that I posed. And the only reason I thought about that is because almost a year ago, right, I had made a Switch emulation video on the Steam Deck video. And that was out for about a few days before Nintendo sent their ninjas after me. And they copyright struck not only that video, but like literally every video that I made that had any Nintendo thing in it at all. So it was really weird that like they did that because it was just a full-blown like nuclear attack on my channel. And I was still small at the time. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of fade away in the background. I'm not going to address this. I'll just let it be where it is and just kind of tiptoe around this. And then, you see other people making Steam Deck Switch emulation videos and then nothing happens. So it was just kind of odd, but whatever. Go into the future and find, I see this Denuvo tweet, which sparked the Twitter poll question because I can't shake the feeling that Nintendo really, really hated the fact that Breath of the Wild was emulated on day one. And arguably, Breath of the Wild running on Cemu wasn't perfect at day one. However, the Cemu devs on their Patreon went bonanzas, and you could argue that Cemu was a Breath of the Wild emulator first and a Wii U emulator second. In any event, you can see that a lot of people were interested in it. I mean, just looking at YouTube videos and other people emulating it, I would internally think that Nintendo felt this was a bit of a black eye for them, especially because it's an exclusive title for their exclusive console that is now playable day one, and it eventually became better on other platforms. So, on PC for emulated. I can see an area where they don't want this to happen again, or at least be able to stop it and mitigate it to some degree. And there's two different ways that they can do this, right? They could either have DRM for emulation only, just making checks to see if it's being emulated, and prevent the game from running as it is. So there's step one. However, by doing that, by doing a full block, both Yuzu and Ryujinx, these emulator devs would have a clear target on how to bypass and work around this. Now, it might take them some amount of time, but eventually, I'm sure the Yuzu and Ryujinx devs will work around this, and this silver bullet that Nintendo has developed will be defeated, and then, people will be able to emulate again. On the other hand, what Nintendo could do is make a check to see if it's running on an emulator, allow the game to run, but someplace like maybe an hour into it, they just make the game break in some manner that no one can actually progress further. Maybe they go to a dungeon and none of the items that you need to get by you can progress, or a door doesn't open. Something like that might happen where people are going to be, talking on forums and other things about this particular issue, and it's going to eventually wind up being that, oh, you're actually playing this on an emulator and not on the Switch itself. So then the problem is that Ryujinx and Yuzu have to then wait and catch up to this news because it's like a little bit piecemeal, and then they have to figure out where this is, get to that point in the game, and then start doing checks. It becomes a little bit harder for the emulator devs because it's not going to be a clean-cut thing where it just doesn't flat-out work to begin with. So these are two different ways that they could try to combat people from emulating Tears of the Kingdom, at least on day one, where they get at least a buffer of time where they prevent people from showing off a bunch of stuff happening through emulation, and all the videos are going to primarily be done on hardware on the Switch. So these are things that I think are things that Nintendo is honestly thinking about. But then, obviously these events are pure speculation on my part, just like little bits of smoke. But then you see Microsoft stops full-on emulators in retail mode, like just full-on blocks it out. And then people reach out, and it turns out that Nintendo is asking Microsoft to not allow this to happen. And that's a very peculiar amount of time. That's just peculiar timing. It's curious timing, to say the least. With Denuvo tweeting out something a week or two ago, now Microsoft is putting a block on emulators because of what Nintendo said. And then you look at just a little bit later, like a day or so later, or even like a few hours later, Nintendo goes ahead and just copyright strikes a bunch of PointCrow's videos on his mods for the Breath of the Wild. So now you have, as a Venn diagram, like 3 different events that all are around Breath of the Wild, emulation, and Nintendo not wanting people to do this. So this is a lot of smoke, and I'm not saying that this leads to fire. Like, correlation does not equal causation, obviously, but there is so many adjacent things that are in the Venn diagram of these things intersecting that you start to wonder, how far is Nintendo willing to go to prevent Tears of the Kingdom to run on an emulator? So this is the video that I wanted to make, just because I had made a poll about it a week or so ago, and I was curious about it then, but I'm becoming more and more confident that this is actually going to happen. Anywho, let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, guys, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.